Hi, everybody, and welcome to Real Conversations in the QC. I'm Redrick Terry. Thanks so much for being with us today. Now, for those of you who are new to this program, our goal here is to highlight issues within the Black community and work towards solutions to some of those issues. Now, we are on today's show going to be revisiting some of the things we've done in the past, how the show got off the ground, and we're going to be speaking to some of those people who were key parts in getting this show up and running, and that's going to be the topic of our first guest today as we get ready for our conversation with Tracy Singleton. Our first guest today on Real Conversations is a key player in this project and in the Quad Cities community. Tracy Singleton is the executive director at the Lincoln Center in Davenport. She's here to catch up with us and talk to us about what's going on in the Quad Cities and the purpose behind this program. Tracy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's a pleasure as always. So, you were actually part of this since the beginning. You were part of its inception and its growth. Tell us first off how this got started and why you decided to take part.
Well, I had just started my job at the Lincoln Center as executive director, and it was Black History Month. So it was a natural fit to do something for Black History Month, but we wanted to do something different, and it was coming out of COVID. We were still kind of in COVID, so we knew we were going to be doing virtual celebration. So I had heard about a podcast called Conversations with a Black Man. And I'm like, oh gosh, like maybe we could do something similar to that, Facebook Live for the month of February. And Scooby and I already had a working relationship together. So I contacted him and it's like, hey, you want to do this? And he's like, I'd love to do it, but I got to make sure it's okay with the station. And so we had a meeting with everyone that should have been involved. And we came up with the decision that we were going to do it for Black History Month, but that these conversations were going to continue after that. We didn't know what that looked like, how it was actually going to happen, but it was determined that they were important enough conversations that this needed to go beyond Black History Month.
So tell me what the goal overall of Real Conversations was at that time and what it is now.
The goal has always been to get comfortable being uncomfortable, that these conversations are necessary. And really, you would think the audience is the Black community, but it's not. It's the Black community sharing their stories with the whole community or aspects of the Black community. But it's really an opportunity to show that you think what's just happening in Chicago or is only taking place in Minnesota or that only happened down in Tennessee is actually happening right here in your own community. But if we're living in our neighborhoods and operating in our silos, we don't always get that perspective. Those really aren't the stories that you see on local TV. So this was an opportunity to say, hey, like these are serious issues. These are real issues. These are the challenges that are happening right here in our own community. And let's share that.
Now, obviously, you're QC through and through. You've been a part of this community for a very long time. So tell me, what is it about this show that is so important to this community, the Quad Cities in specific?
So I was born and raised here. And I actually grew up on the west side of Davenport as the only Black girl in my neighborhood, the only Black girl in my school. So I really navigated both worlds. And it wasn't until I got older and started doing work in the community that I started seeing that sometimes there were distinct differences, that there are huge disparities, that there is lack of opportunity. And so for me, Real Conversations personally was this opportunity to share those stories, to share those challenges, to show where there could have been more support or some advocacy for certain issues. So for me personally, it's getting those narratives out there to show that as a community, we could all be better as a community if we all work together to make sure the entire community succeeds.
And talking about the community, obviously you talked about the Lincoln Center. Tell us what it does as it serves really as an extension of the community here.
It shares our stories, and I think that's the most important thing. I've been a news person for my whole life. I go to the news to find out what's happening in my community. Once again, as I got older, you start to see that not all the stories are told, or they're not always told from a certain point of view. So for me, Real Conversations was that opportunity to get all the stories out there. And they're not all bad, and we're not always trying to blame or point the finger, because there's good stories too, and you don't always get that side of things as well. So for me, Real Conversations is exactly that. It's real conversations. These are things that are happening. They're happening right now. They're not affecting just that person, but potentially could affect the whole community.
Now, I can speak for myself as a QC native. Being part of this job, it's been so interesting for me to learn about different things and different stories of people that I didn't know about beforehand. I wonder if that's the same experience you've gotten so far, especially with Real Conversations. Is there anything that's kind of stuck out to you as something that, oh, wow, that's something I learned that I didn't learn before, or anything interesting that sticks out of your mind that's been covered here?
You know, what's interesting is when Real Conversations started for Black History Month, many of our guests were white. And these were parents who had adopted Black children. This was people who were in an interracial relationship. And so I don't always get that side of the story. So for me, it was eye-opening to learn things from their perspective where they still have a foot in the Black community based on their relationships or their family. So I think for me, that was one of the main things that I got out of it. But as Real Conversations continued and it started evolving into some other things, it is that opportunity to find out about what's happening here that had I not watched Real Conversations, I might not have known about.
So what's the overall thing you want people to walk away from, that watch this show, that follow it, and that hear the stories of this community? What do you want them to walk away from it?
To understand that at the end of the day, we are just one community. I often get asked, well, Tracy, why are you just doing this for the Black community or Black businesses or for Black boys? And I always say nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And if it's not working, if we're still having these same issues, these same challenges, then we have to approach things differently. And at the end of the day, if we can make a better community for the Black community, it just makes for a greater community as a whole for the Quad Cities.
Absolutely. Tracy, we appreciate your partnership. We appreciate you being part of this, and we're looking forward to continue working with you.
Thank you.
All right, Tracy Singleton. Our next conversation here on Real Conversations involves a person who was pivotal in getting this project up and running, and a very familiar face to those who watch TV6. He was here doing sports with us back in 2020, and now he's doing sports for the worldwide leader of sports out at ESPN. And we are so glad to have him here to talk with him today about how this program got started and how it continues to play a big part in the Quad Cities. Here is Scooby Magezza. Hey, Scooby, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm just happy to be here and see the old stomping ground. Yeah, y'all good people. And the QC, y'all good people too, man.
Exactly. We're glad to have you here. We're glad to see you. Obviously, you've been on a lot of good stuff since you've left. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But let's talk about how Real Conversations got started. If you take us back to 2020, you made a really impassioned remark on air, kind of just talking about life as a Black man in the United States and in the Midwest, and it was obviously something that was very impactful. Let's start with what led you to doing that in the first place.
Well, it was during the Black Lives Matter movement, and I remember the Hawkeyes having a situation that ended up going down with that team, how the players sometimes felt like they couldn't be themselves. They couldn't wear earrings, they couldn't show their tattoos, they couldn't wear tank tops, this, that, and the third. And then it just got me thinking as I was putting this story together, because all the time I worked the weekend shift when, I just sit there and I'm writing the script and I put headphones on just to get in the zone. And as I was putting that story together, I just started to feel a mutual shared understanding with those players of how it feels sometimes to not be able to be yourself. So in reading that story, because this community is so dedicated towards the Hawkeyes, I said, this also ties towards me, and I know what those players are going through. So let me try not to only tell the audience what the players are going through, but I'll tell you through my experience what it feels like. So just not being able to be yourself sometimes is something that a lot of Black men deal with growing up. Not being able to fully celebrate our culture, because Black culture isn't necessarily anti-white culture. It's just Black culture. We can all come together and have cultures that can be celebrated together, and there's no need to suppress it. So what led me to talk about that on air was just how me, myself, growing up and the struggles that I faced in my career, buying into the Black culture is something that I have dedicated myself to.
Nobody should be treated differently because of the color of their skin. It ain't right. That's why I'm thankful for TV6 right now, because they let me express myself. Some of you see it, I talk with slang, you feel me? I play music under everything I do. And I love bringing the culture into my work. That's who I am. That's why I'm so enthusiastic and out of the box with the things that I do. Change is coming, and the movement has so much momentum right now. I love it.
Now, let's talk about the reaction to it, because that's obviously something that, especially here in the Quad Cities, you don't see that often on the air, really at all before that. What was the reaction to it, and did that reaction surprise you?
It was funny when I was putting that together, the whole script. It was a random Saturday. Like I said, I worked a weekend shift, and I was with my coworker, and I'm writing the script. I just looked at it, I was like, yo, I'm gonna do a little monologue on air today. And then she was like, okay, no idea what I was doing. Nobody knew what I was doing. I just went on air and I did it. And I think it's important to just keep it real. And if the real recognize real, and you can't fake real. And that's who I am. So I'm going to be the same person on camera as off camera. So when I did it, I didn't think of what I would get a reaction of everybody. I was just speaking to the audience. One thing I want to do as a person on camera, I want to make sure that I'm speaking to the audience as a person. So the reaction was overwhelming because I didn't expect it. The phone started to go off the hook. We started to get messages from people, mostly positive. Some other people were upset, but I don't care, which is fine with me. But for the most of the community, it was just all positive. And I remember going home that day, and then all of a sudden, my boss called me, and she was like, "What did you say on the air?" Because we're getting so many messages, we're getting calls, people are emailing, but it was a lot of people who were touched. And I think they were touched because they felt the realness in it. And not only that, I'm someone that they see on TV every single day, so you can sympathize with that. So the reaction was just a lot of sympathizing, and what having a person who represents the Black culture can do at a TV station is I end up exposing it and showing that towards other people. And some people were opened up to a whole new world just from me opening up.
Yeah, it was really important. And, I was at a different TV station at the time, still in the market. And I remember just how impactful that was. We were having conversations about it at our station. I know there were plenty of viewers that were having conversations about it as well. Obviously somebody who's not from here. What was that like to have that type of impression on an area that you kind of came to for your job, and now all of a sudden you've made such an impression like that?
I think God had something to do with that as well, because even when I watch the video, there's almost this presence and this realness that you just feel. And I don't know what it was, and it's just one of those divine interventions sometimes where you just become so focused on the now in the moment. A lot of people, like you said, you asked me the question, what was your reaction to the community? I didn't think about that. I didn't think about what the outside world was thinking. I always think of it as if I'm talking to one person. And when I moved to the Quad Cities, I had come from an area that my previous job where there was 30 Black people population, and then I move into this place where there's a Black community, and I said to myself, I want to be involved in the Black community. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. I just knew I wanted to be. And through that itself, the universe kind of just brought those opportunities to me. And to be able to impact the Black community is important, because I always say it's about other people. It's bigger than you. Representation is important. To be able to have a little Black boy, a little Black girl look on TV and be like, they look like me and they sound like me, they dress like me, they talk like me. Hey, I could possibly do that too.
So from that initial conversation that you had with the viewers on air to real conversations becoming a thing, walk us through that process, how that came to be.
Well, that had such a huge impact on the community where people wanted to talk to me, on and off the scenes about, my experience, and people had questions as to how they can help. Because one thing that we always said through the Black Lives Matter movement is just have a conversation. Perspective is important. Us as humans, we have to be able to look at one perspective and respect it. Not necessarily you may not agree with it, but just respect it and try to look at something from another person's perspective. It lets you see that, oh, that's why they think this way. That's why they feel this way. I may not understand it, But now through that conversation where it's an open conversation, because you can't listen in a conversation to respond. You need to listen to listen. So Real Conversations was an opportunity for us to just give a voice to those who don't have much of a voice, give an opportunity for people to have a conversation, and let us just listen. If you're going to tune in, you're here to listen, and you're here to hear another perspective.
And looking at some of the shows that you were a part of, there were some true, real conversations being had on those programs. Which ones kind of stick out in your head in terms of those are the ones that you feel like were most impactful, not only to you, but to the people who watch?
I think one episode where we had two gentlemen who wrote a book called Black Faces in White Places. And after our interview, I even had to download the book and go through it. And they basically talked about how us as Black men sometimes go through the corporate world of being around other white men and trying to find ways to navigate through it while trying to hold on to our culture and our Blackness. And I could relate to that so much because growing up in this industry and growing up in a place that was majority white, the Boston area, there were times I was challenged for my Blackness, and there were times I was even asked to change my name and people couldn't pronounce my name. And there was a times where people just made automatic assumptions because of my color. So just hearing them and how impactful their book was towards the Black community. They've spoken to millionaires. They had spoken to really successful Black men in the industry and women who had given tips and certain skill sets of how you can be a Black face in a white place and how much value we bring to those corporations.
So what was the reaction from people that watched Real Conversations? I can speak for myself in my lifetime being here in the Quad Cities. Nothing ever really existed with that goal in mind and for the Black community. What was the reaction when you and others started that program?
Well, the reaction was people really wanting to tell their story, tell their perspective. Because as you dive into topics for Real Conversations, you'll find it every week. You're trying to get guests of people who can speak openly about their experiences. So as you tried to do that, the community actually bought in. And to my surprise, a lot of people wanted to talk about their stories. So the reaction from the community was just, thank you for telling these stories. Thank you for giving it a voice. Thank you for giving it a platform. Thank you for letting us hear another perspective. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be, the Black perspective. I think it's important to hear all different type of perspectives from minorities. We all have to come to a certain point where we can just have a conversation and listen to each other. And in this world, it's hard because people want to be heard before you can let them say anything else. It's like, you have to hear me. But Real Conversation just offers a platform and an opportunity for everybody to speak openly and just listen.
And I think that's an important point too, because I think not only are people from here, some people from here not used to listening to that type of conversation, they're not even used to hearing that type of conversation. So what do you think people who watch this show should come away with in the long run?
In the long run, you should come away with the idea of, I need to listen. And I can't see a certain situation on television or in real life or see a person and automatically make an assumption as to that's who they are or that's what they do. We had other impactful conversations where mothers had to talk about how their children were treated, all because of how they looked. We had other conversations about how Black families are in fear of their son having to go out in the car and drive and getting pulled over, having to explain to your kid that if you get pulled over, you need to act a certain way because your life could be in danger. So being able to hear those conversations and understand that there's a whole different perspective that I had no idea about. There's a whole different experience that these kids and these people have to go through. And if I can just listen to them, I can sympathize with them. But when you can sympathize with them, then that is passed down and we can all end up making a change together, because it's really all about change. And we can't change the world completely all through this, but you can change your community. You can change the neighbors, your neighborhood, and it's all just through conversations. Communication is the key thing in this world that ends up solving most conflicts. It's all due to miscommunication or some type of lack in communication. If you can communicate with each other and understand because communication, the whole communication module, we went to college, we understand it. It's a send and receive. It can't just be a send and send back. You need to send it and then receive it and then send the message and then they receive it. That's how communication goes. So it's important for people to be able to go through that, because that ends up resolving a lot of conflicts and avoiding them.
So obviously, you were with us for a while. You moved on to bigger and better. So we want to hear about it. What have you been up to since you've been away from the Quad Cities?
I've been at ESPN for, I think I'm at a year and a half now. Time
flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah. I've been at ESPN, and I do a lot of stuff on their digital side. A lot of digital shows on ESPN. I do SportsCenter Snapchat, and I host a lot of their stuff on ESPN Plus. And it's been a whirlwind. I tell people all the time, coming here from Iowa to the worldwide leader really made my head spin. But that was just a shout out to the community of things like this that made me comfortable to have real conversations. If I can sit in front of the camera and have this type of conversation, then I can have any sports conversation, in front of the camera. So it really helped me grow. And I've been at ESPN for some time. Of some of the things that I look back on where it was kind of like my wow moments is I've been at the Wakanda world premiere for Black Panther. I've been at the national championship for the last 2 years for football. I've been at the Eastern Conference Finals with the Celtics and the Miami Heat, and traveled a bunch for work. And I've been on the SportsCenter set, and everyone on ESPN, you name it, we're cool on a first name basis. And it's crazy because I've watched all of them growing up. So being at ESPN at the worldwide leader has truly been a blessing. And the game has finally slowed down. It's been a roller coaster, a lot to learn, some growing pains, but that's part of the process. They saw the potential in me, and being at ESPN has always been the dream. And now that I'm living the dream, it's like, all right, now we need to aim higher. So
awesome stuff. You talk about that being a dream for you, and speaking to some people here that might be looking at you as saying that, hey, that guy looks like me. He's accomplishing a dream that might be a similar dream to theirs. What do you say to those kids who might be looking at you as a role model and as somebody who they might want to have a similar career to in the future, how they get there and what they need to do to get there? What do you say to them?
You can be anything that you want to be in life. Truly, you can be anything you want to be, but you have to be able to know what you want to be. And not only that, you also have to understand your personnel, know where you're starting from. I spoke about a GPS, and I call it the God's positioning system. You have to know that this is my destination, and in order for me to get to my destination, I have to move through life with a purpose, following those directions. And sometimes you get a flat tire. Sometimes you're in traffic and you have to wait. There's a number of different things that can slow your path towards getting to your destination, but you also have to understand that it's a process, and it's about falling in love with the process. And as you go through the process, you can't be asking yourself when you go through hardships, why is this happening to me? No, your perspective should be, why is this happening for me? Because everything that happens in life is for a reason. It's meant for you to be prepared for the next opportunity that presents itself. So perspective is so important as you try to achieve your goals, because it is so easy to get down upon yourself. You're going to have people tell you that you can't. You're going to have people tell you that you should be this way. but it's all on you buying into who you are as a person, and not only being the person that you are internally, because the only thing that's going to make you unique and different is the true essence of yourself. And as you try to go through that, you have to be able to know that if I'm myself, I'm going to win. So as you go through life, know exactly what you want to be and stay true to yourself, because it's a process. And as we go through this process, just stay true and keep going.
Fine words. Scooby, thank you so much. You're the man. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
There are a lot of moving parts, as you might know, in getting Real Conversations up and running. We are going to hear from a bunch of different faces and a bunch of different perspectives as we move along in this project. And now we're going to introduce you to some of those faces. All right, as we continue on in Real Conversations, we want to introduce you to some of the names and faces that you'll be hearing from during this program. Got a full house here today as well. Great night as well. Tim Stinson, Kofi Adams. We're going to skip Evan for a second because he's been here before. Jasmine Butler. They are all newcomers to this program. We look forward to hearing from them. And of course, our Evan Denton continues on to be part of this program. We thank you all for that. And we want to just introduce you a little bit to the audience and talk to you a little bit about what this means to you. So we'll start with you, Tim. What makes you want to be a part of Real Conversations, a project like this?
Well, a project like this, first time I've heard about this, it was just interesting to be able to have the real conversations, and get some of the things that I want to know about, as an African-American man in the Quad Cities and in Iowa. Just an opportunity to learn and give my thoughts and my feelings about it. So I thought it'd be a great project to be a part of.
Certainly, Kofi?
I think to kind of echo some of Tim's thoughts, a lot of that same thing. There's a lot of important, I think, conversations and dialogue that need to be had. And sometimes, you don't have access to all that knowledge from other people. So I think it helps to kind of hear maybe an open platform to start some of those conversations.
Jasmine?
Well, to piggyback what the two guys said, to let the community know about our voices and to kind of give different perspectives, because we all are. I know I'm a Quad City native. Kofi is a Quad City native. Tim, you've been here for a very long time. So just all of our different perspectives and how we can educate everyone as well.
Evan, of course, you were a part of Real Conversations before. As you come back to this, what's your favorite part about this project?
Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. I mean, last year we had a topic of talking about the discussion of talking about mental and heart health within the Black community. It's kind of the stigma to not talk about it. We'll need to talk about it in order to help each other out.
Absolutely, very important. I want to ask you both, all of you, because it's obviously a very community-focused show. We're talking about the community and its stories. So what is it about the Quad Cities community to all of you that's so special?
I think it's a blended community. It felt good. Like Jasmine has said, I've been here for a while and stuff, but moving here from some of the bigger markets and things, wasn't sure what the community was going to be like. And it's been good to have to see the different, ethnic varieties out there and stuff. So that's good.
I think I would, echo a little bit what Tim said. And Jasmine mentioned, both her and I are Quad City natives. Like, this is home. So I think that's the main thing for me, as cliche as that sounds, like this is home, and it is, you run into a melting pot of a lot of different people, so.
Evan, what about you?
I mean, I was still the new guy for this part. So learning just about what makes the Quad City culture so unique and just learning about the different stories here.
All right, Jasmine, as you mentioned, a QC native, what is it about this place that's so special to you?
Seeing how much we've grown diversity. I love it. Like, we have all sorts of walks of life in the Quad Cities now. So many people are moving here. So just to show how much we have grown.
Absolutely. Jasmine, Evan, Kofi, Tim, remember those names. You'll be seeing them on Real Conversations. We're glad to have you as part of this project.
Thank you.
And before we go today, we want to remind you that today's program is brought to you in partnership with Together Making a Better Community at the Lincoln Center. TMBC at the Lincoln Center is the hub for resources and events and programs in the African American community in the Quad Cities. To hear more about what they've got going on over at the Lincoln Center, you can visit their Facebook page, TMBC at the Lincoln Center. That's going to do it for Real Conversations this time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Have a great day.